Alright, UFS community, this is Phil Birch here, coming in from a very chilly Midwestern night in Michigan. Trying to do a little bit of meta talk. Um, we recently had a CanNats and UK Nats producing some pretty interesting results with a couple new characters winning it all, and a couple new people probably too. Um, this obviously just is going to be my opinion on the meta. This isn't anything you have to take to heart. This isn't fact, obviously. Um, it's really for your own interpretation. It's just going to be what I think about the meta right now. All right, so the UK Nats was taken by Vincent Gray, as you probably have all read by now. Another one of the super viable characters right now in our very open um, meta that I think we have. And Can Nats was obviously taken by Vespera, run by yours truly. It's the way I look at it is Vespera is probably the only real problem character I see right now. Vespera and maybe Paul Bittner to an extent. Paul Bittner has top two the past two North American events in Worlds and also in Can Nats, obviously. And Gen Con he won, as you all know. He kind of is a big issue right now just because he controls all aspects of the game, really. He controls tempo, he controls pace, he has recursion built in pretty much. He also can outbuild anything pretty quickly, especially six hand size. It gets pretty ridiculous, and that's kind of a problem issue. If I was looking for any character to probably get changed right now, it would definitely be him. I think he could be too much in the upcoming, like for the future. I'm not sure, obviously, what the future holds, but I'd like to imagine that he'll still be extremely relevant the entire time just because of how incredibly powerful he is. And then also the same thing goes for pretty much Sparrow. Sparrow's just got really kind of one trick going for it right now. It's just paralyzing touch is kind of just too strong, and when a card's too strong, it really just dominates, especially against newer players who might not know how to play against it. And that's really what paralyzing touch comes down to. It's very MPE because people probably aren't going to be aware of what necessarily to do in situations involving it, and that's always a problem. But outside of maybe, I'd say probably just paralyzing touch, I think Vespera could be a fine character. I don't necessarily think she's over the top. I don't think she's broken. I think maybe they kind of overdid it on her defensive capabilities when they created her. But I think that someone out there is going to crack the code that is Vespera and figure out how to beat her consistently. Now I'm kind of just gonna talk about some of my feelings about like what cards are good, what off of what symbols, and what's viable and what's not really right now. Right now we got those, obviously the resource symbols in the game. We know which ones aren't very viable, and I think I'm just gonna knock those out of the way real quick. I think Void, Earth, and Order are pretty much the worst symbols in the game right now. Void does nothing outside of Satoshi, and even in Satoshi doesn't really have a good consistent kill. It's really looking for that maybe power attack to try and get the game like in its favor, try to even it out with other symbols. It does a really good job of controlling, and I might consider it maybe the it's not the worst I'd say, but it's definitely bottom three, probably the third worst. Really outside of Satoshi has nothing. Um, Yoshimitsu tries, but Yoshimitsu probably doesn't isn't something you'd consider a real consistent deck in our current meta game. Definitely not. Definitely not anytime recently either, since really the release of the first Red Horizon set. Um, he hasn't really been good since Revoke has been a real card. Next we have like Order. Order has literally nothing. You could try and turn thruster people, but that's been all Order could do for a good, I don't know, 4 or 5 sets. They get nothing consistently. Vincent Gray tried to provide them with some good cards, but it's still not enough to take the game to the next level and actually compete on a consistent basis with the top tier symbols. And then Earth. Earth just does nothing really. Um, I liked where it was heading. I played it before, obviously, but like even in even in the last two sets, it really hasn't gained much ground outside of like a couple Alice Rare foundations, and now with King of Fighters, a few promos. It's too slow. It does a good job trying to pace the game out, but it's not very consistent at doing so, and it relies a lot on draws. The only two characters that try to work with it are King and Omar, and that's only because they can consistently throw like attacks over and over and over again. So those are really the three symbols right now I don't think can compete. Um, that's not to say that somebody couldn't show up to an event and just completely change my feeling about that, because I didn't think Death was very good until I started playing around with it, and I know it's not great, but I know it can work under certain circumstances. I'm sure those other symbols can too. Um, Next, let's go with the top couple of symbols. Life is clearly at the top right now. Life has some of the best characters. It's got Mike Lowe. The Angels run really well still, and well, it just has everything really. It's got cards like all the defensive control cards like Torn Hero. It's got Rebirths, No One to Talk, Sweet Ridiculous, Flex Body, Revoke, Templar. It's got a lot of everything. It even has a solid kill condition in Divine Tribulation, or also throws. And I feel like that life got too powerful. And it's not necessarily like a terrible thing right now. I don't think anything's gonna and life's like dominating by any sense. But I feel like life is just how fire was at the beginning of this block, where fire had all the good cards. I feel like now that's life, and they either have to stop giving them so many good cards or try and balance the power between the rest of the symbols. Um, I guess I'd say my next best symbol would definitely be good. Kind of along the same lines as life. It has a lot of good defensive pieces. It also has like pretty much all the good zero cost foundations, one of the foundations, and a pretty good stable of characters just to kind of like sit back and hide behind things. Skullman off of good's a very solid deck. Amy off of good's pretty good. Then you run lower. You get Mike Lowe off of good again is very solid with his ability to ready things. And then it has access to cards like When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain, which is just a very good card in the format. It's a very format defining card because all the symbols that have it are essentially top tier symbols now, where I wouldn't necessarily have ranked them as top tier now or before then, but I would definitely now put them near the top. And it allows for a lot of shenanigans, and a very like combo based decks can run a little bit safer now, I'd say. It also to a lesser extent lets you play less attacks in your deck for some decks, and I don't necessarily like that, but I feel like we're not getting into like 8 attack deck range still. Our decks are still running about 13, 14 attacks, even with the moons. Um, and that's still, I think, a healthy number. I'd say if it got any lower than, like, if decks could start running 8 attacks consistently with winning, I'd say we'd have something to worry about, but I don't think we're heading that way, even with all the wall decks. Um, Next, I'd say the third top symbol would be All. I don't think a lot of people would agree with me, but I think All does a lot of things very good. It's got both UFS House Champ cards, John Herr and Paul Bittner, who both provide solid characters for it. It also has Skullman does a very good job of what he does off of All, and then you obviously have Omar too. So All is like a champ card symbol, but it does really well. It does a lot of things cool. I got a lot of support in the last couple sets with the cool Skullman stuff, a Reese card or two, and then the KOF promos gave it Clandestine Research, which is something that you all should be playing in all your decks if it has a symbol. It's just a really nutty card, which I think has made a few more all characters even more viable. I won't point fingers at what I think or like who, just because it's some a Michigan guy's gonna be running in the future, but I think you'll have to look out for all, obviously, still. All right, I'm going to go into a few cards that I think probably define the format right now on their power levels. First, I think first and foremost, it's definitely Cursed Blood. I think Cursed Blood's hands down like the best card we have, just for what it does. Um, it's too good, really. If you could just outbuild your opponent outright with it, or you could take away one of their good pieces. And it's built for a format that was definitely a more foundation-based format. And I know we're trying to get away from walls, but just having a card that lets you outbuild like that is just not helping the cause. So I'd say that's probably the top card in the format. Next, I'd probably go with When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain. Kind of in a different vein. I think this card's very good, and I don't think it necessarily needs to go anywhere. I think that its ability to negate and commit something is very helpful, especially in formats dominated by defensive characters run on their abilities, like being able to commit Vespera, being able to commit, say, Skullman, say, Amy, Vincent Gray, things like that are kind of really good. I think good things for the game. The ability to pick up a block or an attack, too, is very helpful, and it helps consistency of decks. I know it's limited to 4 symbols, but like if you look at the other symbols, they still have good access to actions like revoke and stuff like that. So it's not like completely shafting everybody that doesn't get to play it. They still get answers and suggestions and good actions and stuff. Next, I'm gonna say like No One to Talk. I think that card's very, very good, very NPE. Um, it makes people who are new not want to play just because of its existence. People come into the game thinking it's like a fighting game where they get to throw attacks after attacks and try and beat their opponents up and use like cool abilities like combo. And then your opponent plays cards like No One to Talk and ruins everything for everybody. So people are gonna especially at multiple copies, like it can completely end your turn. And I know we have a little bit of cards to counter it, like Zing. Zing did a good job trying to do that, but Zing also shares 2 symbols with it, like Good and Life. So Good and Life keep getting better cards, and everything else is keep trying to lag behind, and it feels like it's just bringing up the rear, and it's kind of ridiculous. I don't think it's good for the game necessarily. I'd say the 4th best card in Standard would definitely be like Martial Arts Champion. Again, it's another card from a different format, but I think it's just very necessary now. We have a lot of drawing cards. There's that Life Cakes deck that runs off the Dry Engine. It's not very relevant anymore, I guess, but those draw cards are still very strong. And then there's also like a ton of all cards, Templars, stuff like that. It's just we need an answer for it, and we didn't really have one until like I guess we've had one the whole time, but nobody's really used it. Martial Arts Champion's a good card. I think it's just at least worth a side deck in any of those symbols. Just because people are going to draw cards and people are going to try and beat you with these draw cards. Like, I never found it to be a dead draw, and I was mainboarding 3 of them in a death deck. So, and this is like over two tournaments. Like, there were 4 of them main decked at Gen Con. Never found it a dead draw. And then 3 of them main decked at Canets, and it was never really a dead draw. And it's really easy to side out for something else, too. So, like, I'd say go for it. Probably the 5th best card, I'm going to say, is definitely Paralyzing Touch. I'd say it's 5 just because I don't consider attacks like the strongest things in the game. I'd say attacks help like lead to negative experiences by players because of some of their abilities, but I don't think they're like the best cards in the game. I think Foundations are the best because they're always going to be out. Attacks, you have to draw them. You have to worry about checking them because they're lower. They have lower control values. And sometimes just checking them can just ruin your complete entire game. But Paralyzing Touch provides another negative experience because, like, if your character that you reversal with it has death, they're losing 3 cards during their turn. with the stun 2 and then the destruction enhance. So like they can't do anything about that, and nobody wants to play against a deck that they can't do anything about. It's just not fun for really anybody. Like, I don't know. I guess it probably needs to like have something happen to it, and I'm not necessarily sure when it could have something happen to it. Like, I don't know how the whole banning process works or the errata process works, but it's pretty strong, and especially in like the Spera, it's not very fair for anybody getting to loop it over and over again. So like, I guess those are my top cards. Um, I don't know. Like just I feel like the meta is pretty balanced right now. I think that the Gen Con showing, there was a very wide diversity of people, obviously, with the top 16. A lot of showings by characters nobody necessarily thought were going to be there. Some dark horses like Jin. And I say that the meta wasn't as open, but like that's just on what was going to win its aspect. I feel like the Angels were just too good. So it was clear that they were going to be at least in the top 4. And it was proved with 2 of them being in the top 4. So like, but other than that, I guess a lot of cool decks got in there. There's a Natali, stuff like that. Natali, there was a Vincent Gray, Skullman, Tira, which is always cool to see in tops. There was a Satoshi. Cool things like that, obviously. And then, like, Cannats had a lot of cool decks in its top cuts, too. We had a Mr. Karate. There was a Alice. There was more Angels. Paul Bittner again. Mike Lowe. Kazuya. Just, stuff like that. It's very cool to see things like that. There was a Zhonghua, I believe, too. A Kicks Zhonghua, which I didn't think was going to make a showing in anything, so proves me wrong again. One thing you'll know about any of my videos is that I'm going to put my foot in my mouth a lot because I'm going to say stuff's bad, and then NJ Brock's going to go and smash people with Yishan. That's just a joke, obviously. Love trolling that guy. It's fun. But, like, people prove me wrong all the time. Forehand sizes couldn't be viable until they are, apparently. Just a bunch of stupid stuff like that. And like I said, I don't know. Like I said, these are just my meta opinions, and you can obviously take them at face value. I wouldn't be surprised to see like random characters finish in tops at the Nats either, because the West Coast guys always play crazy stuff. So we're gonna have like Heihachi, maybe some crazy Marathi decks again, all the 1-checks in the world, probably some kind of crazy Caden deck. Just a bunch of like aggro. You can, it's really cool to see like the different play styles of different people. Like the West Coast people like their aggro and stuff, and then we got like Canada was playing a bunch of cool stuff that like a bunch of them got the top cuts. Michigan's pretty conservative play group. We got the down south guys. They're always cool. See what they're bringing. It's just like a great community to figure it out, and it's really. That's why I say that like, you can take this at face value because my meta opinions are based on like they're based on my local group. They're not like obviously people in like Oshawa, Canada are gonna have a different experience than me in Detroit, Michigan, and then a way different experience than people in like Britain and stuff or Sheffield, like Sheffield, UK. I think that's where they're from. All those good players. Like it's all perspective. Like we have a ton of cool decks here. We have like we've got Trikios working. We've had Clarks built, and a lot of stuff built like off of symbols that aren't normally played. Like Clarks, we've got obviously we played that's Suspera instead of water. Like nobody does that. It's just a cool place to be, and like that's why this community is so good and why this game is so good because there's nothing that is better than knowing that you can be original with a character that somebody else has won with. Like we have a life Ava deck. we're not playing the traditional evil Ava that won worlds. We're not doing stuff like that. We're doing our own thing, and it's like really cool. Uh, that's I guess that's it for me, just mumbling and talking about the same things over and over again and being boring. Um, if you like the videos, obviously hit subscribe. I'll probably try and do some monthly updates of what we got going on here. You just gotta remind me. Any questions you want in my next Q&A, just ask. Facebook me, Jasco cite me, even send them to my YouTube account. Um, that's it for me. I really hope you enjoy these videos as much as I enjoy making them, and I guess that's it. Phil Birch signing off.